Author's Pass.
Hello to everyone at Book Buzz. This is Nick, your host. Today we have a very special guest. We are going to be meeting with Linda Salerno. And I believe your last name is Forand, correct?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to be going over your book, You Have Time to Die and Go Broke. So without further ado, I'd just like to introduce Linda. Hi.
Hi, it's good to meet you. Hi, everybody. And yes, I'm talking about my book, You Have Time to Die and Go Broke. I wrote this because my husband ended up with pulmonary fibrosis, and the last year of his life was horrendous, and dealing with the healthcare system was terrible. And so it inspired me to write the book because I am not the only one who has been through what I've been through.
Yes.
And in essence, the healthcare system today is you have time to die and go broke. Unfortunately, pretty much sums it up.
So yeah, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I guess before we get into the book, can you just tell us a little about your history, where you're from, just so we get to know you a little bit more?
Yeah, I am from North Central Massachusetts, from Fitchburg, Mass. I actually work in the veterinary field. I work as a kennel tech, and besides being a kennel tech, I also do a community access television show, Animal Adventures. And I also have a passion for singing.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm like my dad. I gotta be involved in a whole bunch of different things.
That's awesome.
So again, my journey with this book, it pretty much started when I met Dave and he had a heart attack. Then once we got married, that's my husband, Dave, his in-laws, his mother ended up with Alzheimer's, and his father had a heart disease. So they ended up in a nursing home. His brother, he had one brother who was not well enough to be able to deal with it, and neither was Dave. So I was the primary caregiver.
Okay.
So even though I work in the veterinary medicine, I've also had quite a bit of experience dealing with the healthcare system.
Yeah.
And I wanted to empower people to be able to get the best healthcare system, the best healthcare that they can get through the system that they have to deal with. I mean, basically, we deserve it.
Yeah.
That's what we pay for. That's what is critical for us, for our well-being and quality of life.
Yeah, and so it seems like the inspiration for this book came from more personal matters.
Yes.
Okay. Did you find this was more of like a coping mechanism, or you're just trying to highlight the problems that you had and you're trying to help guide other people?
Both.
Okay.
Both. It is a coping mechanism, but also I feel strongly in my heart that I wanted to help people to get the best healthcare that they possibly can. And I wanted to be able to do it in a book mode that's not too cumbersome, but very comprehensive. And, any media that I can use to be able to empower people to get the best healthcare that they can is extremely important to me.
Yeah. And so the title of the book, obviously very, very kind of direct, and I would say like it's very like on the nose, very intriguing. What exactly, can you explain the significance behind it?
Okay, so basically what happens is that through this journey, I have heard a lot of different stories from different people. I got a little even more information myself. And so basically what happens is, if say in this book, it starts off with finding a doctor and what you should look for and what you should have when you enter that office, what you should expect when you go into that office. And it's really important to be able to have a partnership with the physician that you have.
Yeah.
And that physician should never ghost you.
Yeah.
Also goes into emergency room. I mean, no way should you wait 8 hours. Come on. You can totally die by then. I mean, really.
Yeah.
Goes into admitting because you have so many questions. You have so many needs. And another aspect I go into is having a healthcare advocate, because that's so important. Because if you're admitted into a hospital, you really need to have an advocate. So it mentions on what the responsibilities of an advocate is.
Yeah.
It goes into mental health, which is so very important. It goes into caregiving. From personal experience, I'm going into my third case of caregiving. My mom. So that is no holds barred, totally honest aspect of caregiving. Then it also goes into, let's not forget it now, people, insurance, because it goes into how insurance has its technicals in everything. They are the major problem in the healthcare system.
Yeah.
And that the hospitals have become a corporation. Yes. And so they're not really looking and caring for the people. They're looking for the bottom line, the money.
Exactly.
So it goes into insurance, and it also goes into the future of healthcare system.
Yeah. You know, that's funny. You're talking about that. Like about a month ago, I was, so I'm based out of LA, but I was in San Francisco, and then I got sick, and I tried to go see a doctor there, and like my insurance was pretty much telling me that I couldn't see any medical professional while in another city. And I was like, how am I'm paying for coverage, but it's a very localized coverage. That makes no sense, you know, like I should be able to be healthy wherever. Very bizarre. And yeah, the hospitals didn't want to help unless it was more like money based, it seemed like.
Yeah. Right. And then so what happens is that if you go to your primary care, try to get an actual appointment. I hear that from everybody.
Yeah.
So what happens is, instead of going to the emergency room and waiting for 8 hours, you can go to urgent care. And then and do urgent care. If you go into the emergency room, from my understanding, they even if you don't have insurance, they have to treat you. But that being said, when you get the bill, darling. And so in there, I tell you how to deal with that, because you don't take the bill verbatim. You don't have to pay for it right then and right there. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You want to wait for your insurance to see what they pay, and then before you even pay it. I mean, I ended up getting a bill from the doctors before I even got the test results. I'm like, really? Call up, hey, dude, can you give me my test results first before I pay you? So it's like all stories like that. So what's good is that it gives a voice to the people having to receive the caregiving, to receive the care they need, but also to the actual healthcare workers. So if you know how the system works and understand how the system works, it helps out tremendously for the people trying to give you the health care that they need.
Yeah. And then so what I find interesting is that obviously this seems to stem from some kind of personal perspective, right? So can you just provide a brief overview of the main characters in the book and their roles within the overall.
Okay, so what's wonderful about this
Hmm.
is that is the stories are from real people,
Yeah.
people that have had stories of hor- how horrible it was dealing with the healthcare system and how they overcame it.
Okay.
So it's very real. And so it's different than if you say see a drama like ER or you see Grey's Anatomy. This is real. This
Yeah.
is what really happens. And this is the reality of the healthcare system.
Hmm.
And something needs to be done about it. It has to get out there that there's a lot of people dealing with this. It's not you when you went and you had to get your care. It's not me. It's everyone.
Hmm.
And people need to realize that they're not alone in this struggle.
That's amazing. I think a lot of people need to hear that. Um,
Yeah.
can you discuss a little bit more about the research process that you did regarding these personal experiences?
Yes. What happened is I wanted to be all cumbersome. I didn't want just the people receiving the healthcare to have a voice. I wanted actually to have the healthcare workers take and have a voice themselves.
Hmm.
So in this process, I ended up interviewing nurses. I interviewed a doctor who was my friend. Oh my gosh, she was like, when I interviewed her, it was so therapeutic. It was like,
Really?
it was
Uh-huh.
just like having coffee at, I'm from Massachusetts, a Dunkin' Donuts.
There you go.
And so I interviewed her. I've read a lot of articles as well. I interviewed some relatives. I've had a wonderful cousin who is the guru in health insurance,
Mm.
in processing health insurance. What she told me was like unbelievable. I'm like, oh my God, you're so good. You're so good. And then other cousins who have been sick and having to deal with the healthcare system.
Hmm.
So through all of that, it was sort of like, okay, this is how I'm going to do the book,
Yeah. Wow.
and that was my journey.
And then what did you have any challenges? Like what challenges did you face when writing this book? Were there any specific
Being a first time writer,
first time writer?
I was very I glad to do this process. It was an eye-opening for me, especially with the insurance wise, because people tend to think of the insurance as far as just I have to pay my copay and then I gotta make sure they pay for my prescriptions.
Yeah.
It's so much more than that.
Yeah.
Um, and it was also too, I wanted to not make it cumbersome. I didn't want it so that you had to be a glossary in order to take and go through this.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
But I wanted it to be comprehensive because there's so many elements of the of healthcare. So how do I get this complex system into a book
Hmm.
that's comprehensive?
That was very
But yet give a voice, and give a voice to the people who need that voice.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like there were any specific like scenes or a plot point that let's say were like extremely difficult or perhaps even rewarding to develop? And
Um, they are because I gave a voice to people.
hmm.
Some of the stories were like, seriously, seriously. The one that people resonate to is the one of the mom, and her kid had a child had a kidney stone. Her child. So she
Hmm.
went to the emergencies room and she's like waiting, and the kid's doubled over in pain. So in the meantime, there's another mom with these three little kids running around being, if I may say so, brats. So the nurses were giving attention more to the kids running around being a nuisance than her own son.
Wow.
And it's like, and he was like doubled, he was like on the floor, doubled over in pain, in agony.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, stories like that. My story that resonates with me is that I'm towards the end of my husband's life.
Mm-hmm.
What happened is his pulmonologist wanted to take and have him go to a rheumatologist because one of his test results was borderline, sort of like he thought like he'd have like arthritis, and that would kind of make it hard for him to breathe. So you have your rib cage, and then you have to breathe up and down and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So he said you have to go to central Massachusetts, to Worcester, which is like at least a 30-minute drive. And I said, that's long for him. Because at this point, it was hard for him to even like get out of his bed. But
Wow.
he has to go there. I was like, can't you have somebody in our town? No, we have to go to Worcester. Calls up for her to get a ride. Right in the meantime, I have to have like umpteen tanks because he has anxiety. So he was on oxygen tanks. So he would go through a tank in 3/4 of the time a normal person would.
Wow.
So that's a struggle for the both of us.
Yeah.
Gets down there, gets to the doctor's office. So then he's like, I want to see my wife because it was like I couldn't go in. I want to see my wife. He was putting up a stink. So finally gets me, and I looked at his line and it's crimped. How the heck is he getting oxygen? His line's crimped. That's not even off. So then what happens is his doctor looks at his results like, why is he here? Because one of his tests are high. That's not indicative of arthritis. It doesn't necessarily mean he has that. Why is he here? Because his lung doctor referred me to you. He's like, why are you here? I was like, just call the pulmonologist. Just call him, right?
Yeah.
Okay. He goes, and he looked the day before he called. He's like, he doesn't have arthritis. So he calls him up. I can hear it now in the back. You are number 8 in the queue. He goes, screw this, and slams the phone down. He's like, I'll just put it in the file.
Wow.
So it represents people not doing their job. It represents the frustration of the people giving the health care. And it represents the frustration of people getting the health care.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense.
So that's like one I'll never forget. And another one is when it was the first time I used the tanks. So he ran out of tanks, like out of his tank, like 10 minutes before we got to the hospital, with the office where he had to go for a test. So I told the driver, just keep going. So we get there, we get to the reception office, and his oxygen level was bad. It was like 70, it should be 90. So I told the receptionist that. Name, please. Insurance, please. The level should be 90 and 70. Name, please. Insurance, please. Well, I put up a stink. I'm like, you get that nurse. You get him another tank. So he has his oxygen level correct. And, and then you can get his name. Oh, man. They weren't happy with me, but I didn't care. It was fine. Nurse came, got him a tank. They did the test, and she was an angel. She made sure he had like a tank to get home, and she was an angel.
There you go. That was one out of many.
But there's so many stories out there.
Yeah.
And it's not just sort of like primary care and sort of like going to the hospital, but it's also too in caregiving with dealing with nursing homes.
Yeah.
Some of them are really good, some of them are terrible. And when they're terrible, they're terrible.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So what's like one of the main messages that you wish to convey with this book?
The main passion that I have about this book is to empower people
Okay.
about to get the best healthcare that they can get. I want the message and need the message to go out there in any type of medium to let people know they're not alone. You have a voice. There's a way to deal with it.
Yeah.
And to use that voice. Don't just sit there and say, when they say, oh, yeah, it's sort of like, we'll do this or we'll do that. Be on top of it. If something is not being done properly, let them know about it. Don't
Yeah.
just sit there and be quiet about it. It's not
For
going to get any better.
That's great. I love that mentality, actually. I feel like a lot of people do kind of are afraid of, like, even when you go to a restaurant, they mess up your order. They prefer to just eat it than eat, and just eat it. And I love that you're kind of pushing for that kind of mentality, because that's kind of how you should go about life,
Well, it's a little bit more than that, if I may say so, because this is dealing with your life. This
Yeah.
is like when you go to, and it's the amount of knowledge you have and the amount of knowledge you think the doctor has.
Yeah.
So you say to yourself, I'm not a doctor. So the doctor should know.
Yeah.
Don't take that for granted.
Yeah. No,
Yeah. When you're putting your well-being
risk.
into the hands of a doctor who is supposed to know what they're doing, and they do. A lot of doctors do. Being able to have compassion, being able to think outside the box. We're putting our trust in them, but you can't. Like my father would say to me, never assume something. Get all your facts before you take and make an assumption. Always get your facts.
That's great. Or it's like that saying, if you assume, you make an ass out of you and me, right?
Hey, when I'm dealing with the healthcare system, it's like you want to have that rapport, you want to have that partnership.
Yeah.
But you need to be able to have that partnership with someone who you can trust.
Yes.
Who is going to do what they're going to do. Like my primary care, I have that because I know she's thorough. I know if I have a concern, she is going to listen to me.
That's great.
Yeah, and I know their office to the best of their ability, at least the one that she was before. That's a whole nother difference. So how many primary cares can you go through in 2 years? And so you need to be able to have that partnership, but with that partnership, there has to be trust, and that and it has to, the doctor has to know what they say you feel comfortable doing.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to have the trust with the doctor to give the proper advice in order for you to get well.
Yeah.
And when I took and first did this book, I thought everybody knew those things. They didn't.
Wow.
They just completely put their trust in the doctor.
Yeah.
But you have to be on top of it, and you have to use your voice. And if you have a concern, speak up. Yes, he's a doctor, but yes, you have a voice. You can say, I don't feel comfortable with this. Or you're not listening to me.
Yeah.
And why is that? So I want to get that message out, because when I started this journey, I thought everybody knew that, because that's just the way I am. But that's not the case.
Yeah. And so let's say, like, looking back in your research, do you feel like you found an answer as to why certain doctors maybe aren't fully, let's say
It,
there for their
it
patients?
what happens is part of it is how they are trained.
Okay.
And one thing that they need to be trained is how to think themselves outside the box. So there's a concern with AI. Oh, I'm sorry.
Call from EGBM.
I apologize about that. I completely forgot. It was like, oh, yeah. And so what happens is they need to learn to think outside the box without depending on instrumentation, AI. They need to know how to think outside the box. They have to take and learn, to be compassionate.
Yes.
So their training needs to encompass that. As far as the staffing was fairly, you need to encourage it from day one.
Okay.
And the guidance counselors, if they know somebody's very interested in going into the healthcare system, to encourage it. They have vocational schools now. Vocational schools actually take and they've grown tremendously. And so they can have programs to encompass healthcare for students who want to go in there, and they do that in the veterinary field.
Yeah.
They actually opened up little veterinary clinics for low-income people.
Wow.
And they use the students from the vocational schools. Colleges need to have enough openings for the need that is out there. Bottom line.
Yeah.
If you need like 250 nurses and you only have openings for 100, what good is that going to do?
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And then in order to get the nurses and the doctors to stay, you need to have the work environment conducive for that.
Yeah.
Don't make it more difficult for them to do their job that's actually difficult to begin with.
Yeah, very true.
So if you make it something that they feel good about, if you make their job more efficient so they can give the care that they want to give, they're going to stay. You're not going to see them leaving like they're doing.
Yeah.
And part of insurance is the aspect of, the doctors are tired of dealing with all the paperwork. Yeah. Some doctors have band together and went to the insurance company and said, come on. The prior authorization is getting really out of hand. It makes it hard for us to do our job. Yeah.
Well.
So these things need to get out because not everybody knows about it. And it needs to be both sides of the story.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy for the healthcare workers and it's not easy for the people receiving the healthcare. And neither one of us deserves what we're getting.
Well, did you draw, because you said that you're like a first-time writer, but this is such like a massive kind of topic to try to tackle and dive.
My dad, his motto would be just do it. If he really truly had a passion about it, if he truly wanted to do something, he would just do it.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna either happen or it's not gonna, or it's not.
Yeah.
But you're gonna try.
But for you, in regards to this, I know you had some personal experiences that you were kind of fueled by. But do you feel like did you draw any inspiration from any other authors or literary works when you were creating this book?
Honestly, I like fiction.
Okay.
So I've never, like, as far as some of the healthcare books, I didn't really draw inspiration. Not because I'm just because I'm interested in fiction, but more importantly, the most important thing is I didn't want to focus on one thing in the healthcare system because the articles that I've read, the books that I've seen, encompass mainly like a certain aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because in my book, I even deal with mental health, how you can get care for mental health. Because my actual husband had anxiety and depression. It went critical mass, and he couldn't get somebody to help him. I called the actual hotline. Oh, but you don't have to. You can't see somebody for. There's not a doctor available for the next 20 minutes. It's a critical helpline. Exactly at 20 minutes away. He gets on the line. He wants to go into the hospital. It's like, that's his MO, darling.
Yeah. Wow.
He'll have somebody come in, check him out, and 15 minutes later, he wants to go to the hospital. That's what I need to calm him down about. Well, he wants to go to the hospital. I got so frustrated. I slammed my phone on the ground. I was like, screw it. I'll do it myself. I'll get him calmed down.
Wow.
And that's why it's so important for people to understand they're not alone.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you deal with that? You be tenacious.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give up. The people that anyone that you talk to on the healthcare system that has succeeded didn't give up.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line. And people tend to just get discouraged and give up. So they need to hear these stories, about not giving up, to be tenacious, to keep on top of things.
Yeah. Or like your dad said, if you're passionate about something, just do it,
Yeah. I mean, it's a system that can be very discouraging, and that's why you have to be tenacious, and that's why you have to go and you have to make sure they hear your voice.
Yeah, for sure.
And people need to understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And people need to know through any medium, whether it be books, documentary, that they're not alone.
Yeah. And so do you have any plans for a sequel or a continuation in this research or the story?
Basically, I'm a person that's one step at a time. But that being said, okay, I'm hearing more stories and more wonderful ways on dealing with the system. So what would be, to do like an addition to would be great. I mean, it's so, the healthcare system is so encompassing that it's wonderful for a documentary, or as one like movie documentary, or you could, and that would be wonderful, or you could actually do it like on my chapter in my book. I mean, you could do it by, like it says, not they have, so like I said, they have where you go by and you're seeing a doctor. So you could have one documentary episode on that, and then one documentary of dealing with the hospital, one on mental health. So there's a couple ways that you can do it.
Yeah.
And then my book lends that way. Just if you read the chapters, it lends itself to that. And as far as for a second edition type of thing, again, the healthcare system is so encompassing. There's so many stories that you could just do additions to, as like, say for instance, now you could do like a whole segment on AI and how that affects the health system.
Yeah.
is fascinating, and it can go, and that's also not just diagnostic or how, it's also in teaching
Mm-hmm.
too, virtual, sort of like doing, teaching surgery is virtual. The technique and all that. Things are always evolving in the healthcare system.
Yeah.
So because things are always evolving in the healthcare system, then what happens is you can always add to it.
Add more to it and get some more research done. Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you being kind of like a first-time writer, do you feel like you have any kind of advice or some kind of maybe some ethics from work that you got that you could probably pass on to new writers and beginners and
Do your research.
your research?
Do your research. Oh
Okay.
yeah. Whether, no matter what genre of writing that you do, it's really important. And it's not just writing the book, but the business aspect of it too.
Mm-hmm.
Because you like, it's like first time writers, you think, oh, sort of like it's wonderful to write a book, and you're focusing on all that. But there's also, honestly and truly, a business side to it.
Yeah.
It's sort of in the entertainment field with singing, theater, movies, and you have to be aware of just not your craft,
Mm-hmm.
but the business aspect of the craft itself. I mean, Taylor Swift, she didn't become the person she has just because of her talent.
Yeah.
This woman is business savvy.
Yes.
Beyonce, she didn't get where she got just from her talent. She's business savvy. And also as well as her husband, JC.
Yes. Very correct. Yeah. Love that. That's actually pretty good advice.
And that's not as easy as said as done.
Yeah, but even then, the research, the business side of it, you have to do some research on that. So I think that's also really good.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So speaking of business, can you tell us where we can purchase your book?
Oh sure. You Have Time to Die and Go Broke. Can be purchased through Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and it can and then Exelbris. And those are the places that you can take and purchase it. Now,
Authors Press too, I believe, right?
Pardon?
Authors Press too, I believe, right?
Yeah. Authors Press, you can. I think they probably tell Exelbris that they want some. I don't know if Authors. I mean, I don't know the whole aspect of Authors Press if they print them out themselves.
Okay.
They know it's a publishing company.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, technically speaking, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and then like Authors Press is wonderful to deal with. I feel very comfortable dealing with them, and they've given me such wonderful opportunities. And then if you're interested, you can tell Authors Press, and then they know how to get the books.
Yeah.
Another way to do it is if you plug in my name, my website, and then what happens is that you can find out a book about that as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was like, so you can do it that way by putting do it that way, because I've done that. I tried that like online and it worked that way.
Wow. Okay. So before we get going, Linda, do you feel like you have anything else you'd like to say to our listeners?
Read it before you need it. There
you go. That's really cool.
Oh yeah.
Read it before you need it.
Be empowered.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. This has been Book Buzz. Today, my special guest was Linda Salerno-Forand. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, and it's my pleasure. I always like getting the word out and meeting new interviewers. So I really enjoyed this type of media.
No, for sure. And you were an absolute delight, and I really, appreciate the kind of push that you're going for. Just it's a very inspiring book, and I think a lot of people can benefit from reading this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I enjoyed being on myself, and I also agree that it's something that needs to be said. It needs to be read, and it needs to be seen.
Yes, and
And
read it
it's
before you
it,
need it.
yeah,
Read it before you need it. That's
yeah,
great.
definitely.
And so for those listening, this book is called "You Have Time to Die and Go Broke." It's a beautiful piece on kind of the intricacies of the health system and kind of how you can maneuver around it and navigate through it and kind of, relate to other stories and mishaps and misfortunes that other people have gone through. So, once again, Linda, thank you so much for your time. And it's been a pleasure meeting you.
Same here. You have a good day. Stay safe and well.
Thank you. You as well.